Hi everyone, welcome to tutorial 2. The focus of tutorial 2 is a continuation of measuring techniques, specifically using a gauge object and using plumb and level lines. Unlike last week where I walked you step by step through the process and drew in front of the camera, I have provided some diagrams this time, and I'm just going to talk about the steps and give you a general description of the concepts here in the video. So here we have our arrangement of objects, at least 3 objects. And the first thing you're going to do is just very loosely sketch out the objects. And this may or may not be correct, but I want you just to have an idea generally how large you want it to be on the page. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to choose an object that's going to be your gauge object. For me, I'm going to choose this black jar here because it's sort of small, and I've set this arrangement up so that this will work really well as a gauge object. So it compares very well to other dimensions. So after measuring the height and width, the proportions of the height and width of that black jar, just like we did for tutorial 1, we're going to use that jar to try and map out the composition, try and understand its relationship to the other objects. What I mean by that is, let's say we're going to take the width of this object. If I take this width, I've measured this width, and I move that dimension to the left of this object, you can see that the space in between the two jars is the same as that width. You can also see that the distance between the jar and the roll of tape shares that same width. Also, if we move that width to the right 1 unit, we see that the distance from the edge of this jar to the end of this box is also approximately 1 width. Now we can do the same thing with the height of our gauge object. So I'm going to measure that height, and what I can see, this is because I set this still life up this way, and you should definitely set yours up in a way that makes this process easy. Okay, so I found that this height is the same distance as the height of the box, approximately. I also can see that this distance is approximately the width of my jar, of the blue jar. And this same height is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 3.5, or a little less than 3.5 of that height makes up the width of the box. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to see if there are any plumb and level lines that will be helpful to figure out the drawing. So what I mean by a plumb line is just holding your pencil out. I don't think anyone has a plumb bob. That's a tool that you might use in carpentry, but we're just going to hold our pencil out straight vertically to make the plumb line, and hold it straight horizontally to make the level line. And all we're doing here is we're looking for areas that align. So if I hold my pencil out here, I notice that the bottom of the jar's lid lines up with the top of the jar's lid. So we can imagine this line coming across and connecting these two edges. Obviously, there is a level line that connects the bottom of the two jars because they're sitting on the same surface. Maybe slightly less obvious, but very helpful, is the fact that the left side of our jar, if we imagine a line going down from that, it will bisect the blue roll of tape. We also have the roll of tape aligning with the right side of the jar. Okay, depending on what your arrangement of objects is, you may or may not have helpful areas where you can use a plumb and level line. But hopefully you will. So after you have mapped out your composition, your drawings should look like a grid. There should be some rectangles drawn on your page, either in light graphite or with a colored pencil. You should use that then as your framework, and then slowly draw in the actual objects on top of that framework. And it should be quite easy. If you've added enough of that grid, you should know exactly where everything where everything is, and just be able to look at the subtleties of the contour